The day my daughter-in-law told me I wasn't allowed to use the master bathroom anymore was the day I knew I'd officially become a second-class citizen in my own son's house. Apparently, my presence was contaminating the pristine marble tiles she'd just had installed. What she didn't know was that I owned 17 properties across 3 states, worth more than her precious little townhouse could ever dream of being. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I'd been living with my son Robert and his wife Amanda for exactly 6 months, ever since I'd sold my small house to help them with their mortgage payments. At 64, I thought I was doing the right thing by my family, consolidating resources and being closer to my only grandchild, little Emma. I was making my morning coffee when Amanda swept into the kitchen wearing her silk robe, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She had that particular expression on her face that I'd come to recognize, the one that meant she was about to deliver some new rule or restriction disguised as a reasonable request. "Dorothy," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "we need to talk." I continued stirring my coffee, keeping my voice level. "Good morning to you too, dear. What's on your mind?" "It's about the bathroom situation." She perched on the edge of the counter, examining her manicured nails. "Robert and I have decided that it would be better if you used the guest bathroom exclusively from now on." The spoon clinked against my mug as I paused. "I'm sorry?" "The master bathroom is just so small and we need our privacy. Plus, Emma's been getting confused about whose space is whose. It's better for boundaries if you stick to the guest facilities." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The guest bathroom was tiny, cramped, and always ran out of hot water. Because it was at the end of the plumbing line, but more than that, it was the principle. After everything I'd done for this family, after the sacrifices I'd made, I was being relegated to the servants' quarters. "Of course," I heard myself say. "Whatever makes you comfortable." Amanda brightened, clearly relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene. "Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you understand. You're such a reasonable woman, Dorothy. That's what I've always admired about you." As she glided out of the kitchen, I remained standing there, staring into my coffee. The woman had no idea that her reasonable mother-in-law had been quietly building a real estate empire for the past 40 years. She didn't know that I owned a 6-unit apartment building just 15 minutes from their house, or that I had rental properties scattered across Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin. She certainly didn't know that the small house I'd sold wasn't my only property. It was just the one I happened to be living in at the time. The bathroom incident was just the latest in a series of small humiliations that had been steadily escalating since I'd moved in. First, it was the suggestion that I eat dinner earlier, so they could have couple time during their meals. Then came the request to park my car in the driveway instead of the garage, because Amanda's new Mercedes needed to be protected from the elements. Most recently, I'd been asked to contribute more for groceries because my senior portions were apparently still too large. But I bit my tongue and smiled, just like I always did. My late husband Thomas used to say I was too patient for my own good, that I let people walk all over me. He'd been gone 3 years now, and I was still hearing his voice in my head, still feeling guilty about not standing up for myself. That afternoon, while Amanda was at her yoga class and Robert was at work, I called my property manager, Glenn. We'd been working together for over a decade, and he knew my portfolio better than anyone. "Dorothy, good to hear from you. How's the new living situation working out?" I found myself in my small bedroom, speaking in hushed tones even though I was alone in the house. "It's fine. Actually, I'm calling about the Riverside property." "Is the renovated unit ready to show yet?" "Just finished yesterday. We've already got 3 applications for it. With the updates you approved, we can probably get $2,500 a month." I smiled, feeling a familiar warmth. My properties were more than just investments. They were proof of my independence, my success, my ability to take care of myself. Something that no one in this house seemed to remember I was capable of. Excellent. And the Columbus building? How's the new property manager working out? Fantastic. She's already improved the occupancy rate by 12%. You really have an eye for people, Dorothy. After I hung up, I sat on my bed and looked around the small room I'd been assigned. It had been Emma's nursery before she moved to her big girl room, and I could still see the faint outlines where alphabet stickers had been peeled off the walls. The closet was too small for my clothes. The window faced the neighbor's fence, and the radiator clanged all night. But none of that bothered me as much as the way I was being treated by the people who were supposed to love me. That evening at dinner, the conversation turned to Emma's upcoming birthday party. "We're thinking of renting out the community center," Amanda said, cutting her salmon into precise pieces. "The house just isn't big enough for all the children we want to invite." Robert nodded enthusiastically. "It'll be worth it to see Emma happy, though it is going to stretch the budget pretty thin." I looked up from my plate. "I'd be happy to help cover the cost." Amanda and Robert exchanged a glance, one of those wordless communications that married couples perfect over time. "Oh, that's sweet of you to offer," Amanda said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for overeager children. "But we couldn't possibly ask you to dip into your pension for our expenses." "Besides, Mom," Robert added, "you've already helped us so much by selling your house and moving in here. We know this arrangement is helping you stretch your own budget." I felt my jaw tighten. They assumed I was living here because I needed financial help, when the truth was quite the opposite. I'd moved in because I wanted to be closer to my granddaughter, not because I couldn't afford my own place. But somehow, that narrative had gotten twisted into me being the poor elderly parent who needed their charity. "Actually," I said carefully, "my situation is more stable than you might think." Amanda laughed, a bright tinkling sound that was probably meant to be charming, but hit my ears like breaking glass. "Oh, Dorothy, you don't need to put on a brave face for us. We understand how hard it must be on a fixed income." "Everyone struggles at your age," Robert added, reaching over to pat my hand. "It's nothing to be ashamed of." I stared at my son, this man I'd raised from a colicky baby into what I'd thought was a successful adult. When had he become so patronizing? When had he decided I was fragile, incompetent, in need of his protection? "I appreciate your concern," I said, pushing my chair back from the table. "I think I'll turn in early tonight." As I climbed the stairs to my small room, I heard Amanda whisper to Robert, "I think we need to have a conversation about expectations. Your mother seems to think she has more money than she does." I paused on the landing, hidden in the shadows. "Maybe we should handle her finances for her," Robert whispered back, "just to make sure she's not overspending or getting scammed. Seniors can be so vulnerable to that kind of thing." The rage that shot through me was so sudden and intense that I had to grip the banister to keep from marching back down there. They wanted to manage my finances? These two people who were struggling to pay for a child's birthday party wanted to take control of my money? In my room, I pulled out my laptop and logged into my property management system. 17 properties. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A gross annual income of over $300,000. A net worth that put me comfortably in the top 5% for my age group. I'd spent decades building this portfolio, starting with a small duplex I'd bought with my savings when Robert was in high school. While other women my age were planning their retirements around Social Security checks, I was planning mine around passive income streams. Thomas had been skeptical at first. "Real estate is risky," he'd said when I'd proposed buying our first rental property. "What if we can't find tenants? What if something major breaks?" But I'd done my research. I'd learned about market trends, cap rates, vacancy allowances. I'd started small and grown slowly, reinvesting every profit back into new properties. When Thomas had seen the success of that first duplex, he'd become my biggest supporter. "You have an instinct for this," he'd told me after we'd closed on our third property. "You see potential where other people see problems." He was right. I could walk into a run-down building and see exactly what it could become. I could look at struggling neighborhoods and identify the ones that were about to turn around. I'd built my empire not through luck or inheritance, but through knowledge, patience, and an eye for opportunity. And now my own son thought I was too feeble to manage my own affairs. I closed the laptop and prepared for bed, using the cramped guest bathroom with its lukewarm water and dim lighting. As I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection in the small mirror. I looked older than my 64 years, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. When had I become this woman who accepted disrespect with a smile? When had I stopped advocating for myself? The next morning, Emma ran into the kitchen while I was making breakfast, her arms wrapping around my legs in a hug that instantly improved my mood. "Grandma, will you make pancakes?" "Of course, sweetheart." Amanda appeared moments later, her face tight with displeasure. "Emma, what have I told you about bothering Grandma in the mornings?" "She's not bothering me," I said quickly. "I love making breakfast for her." "And I love your pancakes," Emma added, bouncing on her toes. Amanda's expression softened slightly at her daughter's enthusiasm, but her next words were directed at me. "We've been trying to establish healthier breakfast routines for Emma. Perhaps just cereal today?" I felt my shoulders sag. Even this small joy was being taken from me. Of course. As I poured cereal into Emma's bowl, Robert came downstairs, already checking his phone. "I'm showing properties all day," he announced. He'd become a real estate agent 2 years ago, after his previous career in marketing hadn't panned out. The irony wasn't lost on me that my son was struggling to sell houses while I'd been successfully buying and selling them for 4 decades. "How's business?" I asked, genuinely interested. He shrugged. "Slow. The market's been weird lately. Too many investors coming in and pricing out regular buyers." I nearly choked on my coffee. Robert had no idea that I was one of those investors he was complaining about. Just last month, I'd outbid a young couple for a duplex in their neighborhood, though I'd done it through my LLC to maintain privacy. "Maybe you need to diversify," I suggested. "Look into different types of properties." Amanda scoffed. "Real estate is complicated enough without getting fancy. Robert's learning the basics first." The condescension in her voice made me set my mug down harder than necessary. "You're right, of course. What would I know about real estate?" Both of them. Missed the sarcasm entirely. The weekend brought yet another incident that made my living situation feel increasingly untenable. Emma had invited a friend over for a playdate, and the 2 girls were running around the house when Emma's friend asked to use the bathroom. "The one upstairs is off limits," Emma said with the serious tone children use when repeating adult rules. "Grandma has to use the small one, so that's probably where you should go too." I was in the kitchen when I overheard this exchange, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. It was one thing to accept this arrangement privately, but having children understand that I was being treated as a second-class resident was something else entirely. Later that evening, after Emma's friend had gone home, I decided to address the situation. "Robert," I said, finding him in his home office, "I think we need to discuss the household arrangements." He looked up from his computer, distracted. "Is everything okay, Mom?" "I'm not comfortable with the bathroom restrictions, especially when Emma has friends over. It sends the wrong message." His face immediately shifted into that patient expression he'd perfected, the one that made me feel like I was being unreasonable. "Mom, we talked about this. It's just more practical this way." "Practical for whom?" "For all of us." Amanda specifically asked. Amanda asked, and you agreed, without considering how it might make me feel. Robert sighed, closing his laptop. "Look, I don't want to get into this with you, but Amanda does most of the cleaning in this house. If she's more comfortable with this arrangement..." I clean too, I interrupted. I've been doing my own laundry, keeping my room tidy, helping with dishes. I know, Mom, and we appreciate that. But this isn't really about cleaning, is it? It's about respect and boundaries. There it was, the real truth. This wasn't about bathrooms or practicality. This was about keeping me in my place, making sure I understood my position in their household hierarchy. You're right, I said quietly. It is about respect. As I left his office, I heard him sigh again, the sound of someone dealing with a difficult situation. I was the difficult situation. The inconvenient mother who'd moved in and disrupted their perfect life. That night, I lay in bed listening to the radiator clang and thinking about the conversation I'd had with my friend Barbara earlier that week. Barbara was in a similar situation with her daughter's family, and she'd been complaining about feeling invisible, unappreciated. Sometimes I wonder if they even remember I'm here, she'd said, except when they need babysitting or help with bills. At the time, I'd felt grateful that my situation wasn't that bad. But now I realized I'd been lying to myself. My situation was exactly that bad. I was just better at pretending it wasn't. The breaking point came the following Tuesday. I'd had a property inspection scheduled for 9 in the morning, one of my units in a building about 20 minutes away. The tenant had reported some minor plumbing issues, and I wanted to check them myself rather than just relying on the maintenance crew's assessment. I'd mentioned the night before that I'd be out for a few hours in the morning. What I hadn't mentioned was that I was going in my capacity as a property owner, not just a senior citizen running errands. When I returned to the house around 11, I found Amanda in the living room with 2 of her friends, all of them holding coffee cups and speaking in hushed tones. The conversation stopped abruptly when I entered. "Oh, Dorothy," Amanda said, her voice artificially bright. "How was your outing?" "Fine, thank you." One of her friends, a woman I'd met briefly before named Christine, smiled at me with that particular expression people get when they're trying to be kind to someone they pay. "Amanda was just telling us about how independent you are," Christine said. "It's so wonderful that you're still able to get around on your own." I felt something inside me crack. Yes, I manage. "Where did you go today?" the other friend asked. Her name was Julia, and she had the eager expression of someone who enjoyed gathering gossip. "Did you have appointments?" "I had some business to take care of." Amanda jumped in quickly. "Mom likes to stay busy. It's good for seniors to have routines, activities." They were talking about me as if I were a child or a pet. Poor Dorothy, trying so hard to stay relevant, pretending she had important places to be. "What kind of business do you handle these days?" Julia asked, leaning forward with interest. "I know Robert helps you with the important stuff." The implication was clear. Robert handled the real decisions while I pottered around with trivial errands. "Property inspections," I said calmly. "Tenant issues, maintenance scheduling, the usual." Amanda's friends exchanged glances, clearly confused. "Oh, you work for a property management company?" Christine asked. "That's wonderful that they hire seniors." Before I could correct her, Amanda spoke up. No, she's just helping out a friend. Dorothy likes to feel useful." The condescension in her voice was so thick I could almost taste it. Likes to feel useful. As if my business activities were charity work, something to keep the old lady occupied. I excused myself and went to my room, my hands shaking with anger. From behind my closed door, I could hear their conversation resume, now with Amanda explaining about how challenging it was to have an elderly parent living with them. "She tries so hard to contribute," Amanda was saying. "But you know how it is. They want to feel independent, even when they're not really anymore. We have to be patient." That was the moment I decided enough was enough. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to Glenn. It was time to remind my family and myself exactly who Dorothy Matthews really was. It was time to stop hiding behind their assumptions and show them what they'd been taking for granted. The plan I began to formulate wasn't about revenge, exactly. It was about respect. And if they couldn't give it freely, perhaps they needed a demonstration of why it was deserved. I spent the rest of the afternoon reaching out to my contractors, my property managers, my accountant. By the time Robert and Amanda sat down for dinner, I'd set a series of events in motion that would very thoroughly shake their assumptions about poor, dependent Dorothy. At dinner, I decided to test the waters. "How was your day?" Robert asked. The question directed more at Amanda than at me. "Fine," I said. "I've been thinking about making some changes, though." Amanda looked up sharply. "Changes?" "Well, since living arrangements here seem to be causing some stress for everyone, I thought it might be time to consider alternatives." Robert's face immediately showed concern. "Mom, we don't want you to feel like you have to leave. This is your home, too." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Because lately, it's felt more like I'm an inconvenient house guest." "That's not true." "Amanda?" protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "We love having you here." I looked at them both. These two people who thought they were managing me, protecting me, making decisions for my own good. They had no idea what was coming. "I appreciate that," I said. "But I've been thinking it's time I had my own space again. Somewhere I can have my own bathroom, my own kitchen, my own rules." Robert frowned. "Mom, finding a good apartment that you can afford won't be a problem," I finished. "Trust me on that." They exchanged one of their looks again, that wordless communication that said they thought I was being unrealistic, maybe even showing early signs of cognitive decline. But they would learn soon enough how wrong they were. They would discover that the woman they'd been treating like a burden, like a charity case, like an elderly relative to be managed and contained, was actually someone they should have been respecting all along. I excused myself from dinner early, claiming tiredness. But I wasn't tired. I was energized for the first time in months. Tomorrow, the first phase of my plan would begin, and Amanda would learn that guest bathrooms were the least of her concerns. As I got ready for bed in that cramped little bathroom one more time, I smiled at my reflection. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, they would start to understand exactly who Dorothy Matthews really was. The next morning, I was sipping my coffee when the doorbell rang. Amanda was still in her robe, looking annoyed at being disturbed so early. "Dorothy, can you get that?" she called from the kitchen. "I'm not dressed." I opened the door to find Marcus, my contractor for the past 15 years, standing on the doorstep with his work tablet and a warm smile. "Mrs. Matthews, good to see you. I'm here about the bathroom renovation you requested." I could hear Amanda's gasp behind me, followed by hurried footsteps as she rushed to the door. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," Amanda said, pushing past me. "We didn't request any renovations." Marcus looked confused, checking his tablet. "I have Dorothy Matthews at this address, requesting a complete master bathroom renovation. Full tear-out, custom tile work, upgraded fixtures. The work order is right here." Amanda's face went pale. "How much exactly is this renovation supposed to cost?" $45,000, ma'am. Mrs. Matthews approved the highest-end materials. I watched Amanda's face cycle through several emotions before settling on fury mixed with panic. "There's been a misunderstanding," she stammered. "We'll need to cancel this." "Actually," I said calmly, "there's no misunderstanding. I'm having the guest bathroom renovated." Both Amanda and Marcus looked at me in confusion. "The guest bathroom?" Marcus asked. "It's only 30 square feet. You want to spend $45,000 on a tiny guest bathroom?" "That's the one I'll be using most often," I explained. "Since I've been asked not to use the master bathroom anymore, I thought I'd make sure my space was properly appointed." Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Behind her, I could see Robert rushing down the stairs, still pulling on his shirt. "What's going on?" he asked. Before I could answer, Marcus was pulling out his tablet again. "Oh, Mrs. Matthews, while I'm here, Johnson Landscaping wants to confirm tomorrow's appointment for the infinity pool installation." The silence that followed was deafening. "Pool?" Robert whispered. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Custom infinity pool with heated spa attachment. Gorgeous design. Your mother has excellent taste." Amanda found her voice first. "Pool? Dorothy, you cannot install a pool in our backyard." "Why not?" I asked innocently. "I'll be covering all the costs, and it will increase your property value significantly." "Because," Amanda sputtered, "because this is our house." Marcus looked genuinely confused now. "Ma'am, according to our records, Mrs. Matthews is the property owner. We worked on several of her other properties last year." The color drained completely from Amanda's face. Robert looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. "Other properties?" Robert said faintly. I smiled at Marcus. "Thank you for coming by. Please proceed with the bathroom renovation as planned. As for the pool, let's push that back a week. I want to make sure everything is properly coordinated." Marcus nodded and headed back to his truck, leaving my son and daughter-in-law staring at me like I'd just sprouted horns. "Dorothy," Amanda said carefully, "we need to talk." "Of course, dear. But first I need to take a call from my accountant. Something about quarterly tax payments on my rental income." I walked into the kitchen and answered my phone, speaking loud enough for them to hear every word. "Yes, Helen. I received the portfolio summary. The Columbus property is performing well above expectations. No, I don't need to liquidate anything for the renovations. I have plenty of liquidity in my checking account." When I hung up, both Robert and Amanda were standing in the doorway, wearing nearly identical expressions of shock and confusion. "Mom?" Robert said slowly. "What was that about?" "Oh, just business," I said, refilling my coffee. "You know how it is with property management. Always something that needs attention." Amanda stepped forward, her high-pitched voice shaking. "You're telling us you own other properties?" 17, to be precise. The number hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. 17? Robert's voice cracked on the word. "Residential mostly, though I do have 2 small commercial buildings and a mixed-use development. Would you like to see the portfolio summary? I have spreadsheets." "You have spreadsheets," Amanda repeated flatly. "Oh yes, I'm very organized." "About my investments. Have to be, when you're managing that much property." I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. The screen showed a detailed property management dashboard with photos, rental rates, occupancy percentages, and maintenance schedules. Robert sank into a chair, staring at the screen. This says you gross over $300,000 a year." "Before expenses," I corrected. "Net is about $240 after maintenance, management fees, insurance, taxes. Still quite comfortable." Amanda made a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a moan. "You're rich." "I prefer financially secure," I said. "Rich sounds so flashy." "But why?" Robert started, then stopped, running his hands through his hair. "Mom, why didn't you tell us?" I closed the laptop and looked at them both. Really looked at them, seeing the confusion, the embarrassment, the dawning realization of how they'd been treating me. "Tell you what, exactly? That I didn't need your charity? That I wasn't some poor old woman barely scraping by on Social Security?" Amanda's face flushed red. "You never thought what? That I might have my own money, my own life, my own capabilities?" My voice remained calm, but I could feel the anger I'd been suppressing for months finally finding its way to the surface. "You assumed I was desperate, broke, dependent? You treated me like a burden you were graciously shouldering." "That's not fair," Robert protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When did either of you ask about my finances? When did you inquire about what I'd been doing with my life before I moved here? You saw an older woman who was willing to sell her house to help with your mortgage, and you assumed that meant I was at your mercy. The doorbell rang again, interrupting the tense silence. This time it was Susan from my property management company, holding a briefcase and looking professional. Mrs. Matthews, I have those contracts for the new acquisition. The sellers accepted our offer on the 4-unit building downtown. I could hear Amanda make a strangled noise behind me. Wonderful, I said. Come in, Susan. We can finalize everything in the kitchen. As Susan spread the contracts across the kitchen table, she chatted enthusiastically about the property's potential. With the renovations you've planned, we should be able to increase the rent by 30%. The location is perfect for young professionals. I think you'll see a return on investment within 3 years. I signed the documents while Robert and Amanda watched in stunned silence. The purchase price alone was more than their annual household income. After Susan left, the 3 of us sat around the table not speaking for several minutes. Finally, Amanda broke the silence. How long? How long what? How long have you been doing this? Buying properties? Since before Robert was born. I bought my first duplex when I was 23. I was tired of throwing money away on rent. Robert's head shot up. Before I was born? But Dad always said you didn't have any money when I was young. Your father didn't always pay attention to our financial details. I handled the investments while he focused on his engineering work. But why didn't you live in a nicer house? Why did we always worry about money? I smiled sadly. Because I was reinvesting everything back into new properties. The house we lived in was paid off, but modest. Every spare dollar went into building this portfolio. Amanda was staring at her hands. When you sold your house and moved here? I sold the house I was living in. It wasn't my only property. I paused. I moved here because I wanted to be closer to my granddaughter. I wanted to help with your mortgage because I could afford to, not because I had to liquidate everything I owned. The weight of their misconceptions was beginning to hit them. I could see Robert calculating backward, remembering every condescending comment, every assumption about my limitations. The guest bathroom, he said quietly. Yes? We made you use the guest bathroom because we thought you should be grateful just to have a place to live. That's exactly what you thought. Amanda suddenly stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger, though I suspected the anger was directed more at herself than at me. You could have corrected us, she burst out. You could have told us the truth. And then what? You would have treated me differently because of my money. Yes, no, I mean... She floundered, realizing the trap she'd walked into. You see the problem? I said gently. If you only respect me because I have money, then you don't really respect me at all. Robert put his head in his hands. Oh God, Mom, what have we done? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Jake, the father of Emma's best friend Madison. Dorothy, I didn't know you lived here too. I was just dropping something off for Emma. Amanda and Robert both looked confused by his familiar tone. Hello, Jake. Is everything all right? More than all right. I wanted to thank you again for being so understanding about the rent increase. Melissa and I really appreciate you keeping it to just 5%. With the market the way it is, we know you could have asked for much more. And just like that, another piece of my secret life had been revealed. Jake lived in one of my buildings, had been a reliable tenant for 3 years. His wife worked as a nurse, and they'd always paid on time, taken good care of the unit. Just good business, I said. Good tenants are worth keeping. After Jake left, Amanda sank back into her chair. You're the landlord of Emma's best friend's family. I'm the landlord of a lot of people. How many people in this neighborhood know who you really are? I thought about it. The contractor, who just left, has worked on several of my properties. The landscaping company that maintains my buildings also does work in this area. My accountant's office is downtown. She serves a lot of people around here. So everyone knows except us, Robert said, his voice hollow. I never made it a secret. You simply never asked. Emma chose that moment to come running downstairs, still in her pajamas. Grandma, Madison's dad said you're his landlord. That's so cool. Does that mean you own their house? I own the building they live in, sweetheart. Like how Daddy sells houses but you own them. Something like that. Emma clapped her hands together. That's awesome. Can I see them? Are they nice houses? Amanda finally seemed to shake off her shock. Emma, go get dressed. We'll talk about this later. After Emma had reluctantly trudged back upstairs, the three of us sat in silence again. I think, I said finally, we need to have a serious conversation about our living arrangement here. Both of them looked at me with something approaching fear. This situation isn't working for any of us, I continued. You both clearly resent having me here, and I'm tired of being treated like a charity case. Mom, no, Robert protested. We don't want you to leave. You wanted me to use the guest bathroom because I wasn't worth sharing the master bath with. Amanda winced. We were wrong about that. You were wrong about a lot of things. The pain in Robert's voice was genuine when he spoke. What do you want us to do? How do we fix this? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, who had somehow forgotten that I was a complete person with my own life and capabilities. I'm not sure you can fix it, I said honestly, but maybe we can start over. How? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where my infinity pool would soon be installed, if I decided to keep this property at all. First, you need to understand that I'm not living here because I need to. I'm here because I chose to be. If that changes, if you make me feel unwelcome again, I'll leave. We don't want that, Amanda said quickly. Then prove it. Treat me like the independent adult I am, not like your elderly dependent. The bathroom thing will be resolved when the renovation is complete. My new bathroom will be far nicer than your master bath. Amanda flinched. And the next time you want to make household rules that affect me, you'll ask my opinion first. They both nodded. But more than that, I continued, you need to stop making assumptions about what I'm capable of. Stop talking about my finances, my activities, my life as if I'm some confused old woman who doesn't understand reality. We never meant to. Intent doesn't matter if the impact is harmful. I turned back to face them. I've spent my entire adult life building something. I've made smart decisions, worked hard, invested wisely. I didn't do all of that just to be patronized by my own family. The doorbell rang once more. This time it was a young woman in a business suit, carrying a folder. Mrs. Matthews, I'm Jennifer from Apex Development. We have those property management reports you requested. I stepped outside to speak with her privately, but I could see Amanda and Robert watching through the window as she handed me thick folders, and we discussed several properties by address. When I came back inside, they were both still sitting. At the table, looking defeated. That was about the Columbus buildings. We're considering some major renovations that should increase the value significantly. Where? Robert asked. My property manager and I, we make these decisions together. Amanda spoke up hesitantly. Dorothy, how much are you worth? I mean, overall? I considered her question. A week ago, it would have been intrusive, presumptuous. Now it felt like a genuine attempt to understand. Including all properties, equity, and liquid assets? Probably around $4 million. The number settled over them like a blanket. $4 million, Amanda repeated. Give or take. Robert was calculating again. Mom, when you sold your house to help with our mortgage, I was helping family, The money didn't matter to me, but I thought it might relieve some stress for you. But we treated it like you were giving us everything you had. Because that's what you chose to believe. Amanda started crying then, quiet tears that she wiped away quickly. I'm so ashamed, she whispered. We've been horrible to you. You've been thoughtless, I corrected. There's a difference. I don't understand, Robert said. Why did you let us treat you that way? Why didn't you stop us? I sat back down, suddenly feeling every one of my 64 years. Because I wanted to be loved for myself, not for what I could provide. When you thought I was just a poor old woman, and you still invited me to live here, I thought it meant you genuinely wanted me around. We did want you around! Did you? Or did you want a built-in babysitter who was grateful enough to handle the chores you didn't want to do? Neither of them could answer that immediately, which was answer enough. When you relegated me to the guest bathroom, when you talked about managing my finances, when you treated me like I was becoming incompetent, that's when I knew I had to show you the truth. The bathroom renovations, the pool. Amanda said, were a gentle way of revealing what you'd been missing, what you'd chosen not to see. Robert leaned forward. Mom, I'm so sorry. We've been complete asses. Language, I said automatically, then smiled slightly. But yes, you have been. How do we make this right? I stood up again, feeling a sudden energy. First, you're going to call Emma down here. We're all going to have a conversation about respect and assumptions. Then, you're going to help me set up the nursery. But we already have Amanda started, then stopped. Not for my grandchild. I'm setting up a proper guest room that will sometimes function as a nursery when I babysit Emma for extended periods. You want to babysit? I want to be a grandmother, not a live-in servant who's kept isolated upstairs. They both nodded, finally understanding. And tonight, I continued, I'm cooking dinner, a real dinner. In the kitchen, I'll now be sharing as an equal member of this household. What can we do to help? Robert asked. I smiled. You can start by treating me like someone whose opinion matters. Someone who has something valuable to contribute. Someone who chose to be here, not someone who was stuck here. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Glenn. Excuse me, I said, reading the message. One of my tenants is requesting permission to install a new dishwasher. I need to approve the model and arrange for a contractor. I typed back a quick response, then looked up to find both of them watching me with new eyes. Questions? I asked. Just one, Amanda said. Are you planning to stay? I considered this. A week ago, I would have said yes immediately. Now, I realized I actually had to think about it. That depends on how things go from here, I said honestly. I love Emma. I want to be in her life, but I won't stay where I'm not respected. You'll be respected, Robert said quickly. We'll make sure of it, Amanda added. I nodded. Then let's call Emma down and start rebuilding this family the right way. As I went to the bottom of the stairs to call my granddaughter, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since moving into this house, I felt like I belonged. Not as the poor relative who needed taking care of, but as the strong, independent woman I'd always been. The guest bathroom had become a symbol of my second-class status, but it was about to become something else entirely. The most luxurious bathroom in the house, and a daily reminder to my family that they had been very, very wrong about Dorothy Matthews. The changes in my living situation became apparent immediately, but the real test came 3 weeks later when Amanda's mother, Patricia, decided to visit for the weekend. Patricia was everything Amanda aspired to be. A retired university professor, with an air of intellectual superiority and enough passive aggression to fill a small stadium. She arrived on a Friday afternoon, immediately critiquing everything from the landscaping to Emma's pronunciation of multisyllabic words. Amanda, dear, she said within minutes of walking through the door, I noticed the grass needs edging. And why is there construction equipment in the driveway? I was in the newly renovated guest bathroom, now featuring heated marble floors, a rainfall shower with 6 body jets, and custom lighting that could be adjusted for different times of day, when I heard her distinctive voice. "That's Dorothy's bathroom renovation," Amanda explained. "She's upgrading it." Upgrading? Isn't that rather expensive for someone in her position? I finished applying my moisturizer, taking my time. Through the door, I could hear the conversation continuing. "Mom, there's something we need to tell you about Dorothy." "Oh? Has she become more difficult?" I've always worried about elderly relatives becoming demanding when they're living on charity. I opened the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway, wearing my silk robe and radiating the confidence that comes from having just soaked in a bathtub that cost more than most people's cars. "Good afternoon, Patricia," I said warmly. "How lovely to see you." Patricia's eyes widened slightly as she took in my appearance. I looked refreshed, relaxed, and definitely not like someone living on charity. "Dorothy," she replied carefully. Amanda was just mentioning bathroom renovations. "Oh yes, Marcus did beautiful work. Would you like to see?" Before Patricia could respond, I had gently ushered her toward the bathroom. Her gasp was audible as she stepped inside. "My goodness," she breathed. "This is extraordinary." I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. The heated floors are lovely in the winter, and the steam function in the shower is wonderfully therapeutic. Patricia ran her hand along the custom vanity with its marble top and LED-lit mirror. "This must have cost a fortune." "It was worth it," I said simply. As we returned to the living room, Patricia's wheels were clearly turning. She couldn't quite reconcile the expensive renovation with her assumptions about my financial state. "Dorothy," she said slowly, "forgive me for asking, but how exactly are you affording such luxurious upgrades?" Amanda and Robert exchanged a loaded glance. "Mom," Robert interrupted, "why don't we all sit down? There's something we should explain." "Actually," I said, checking my phone, "I need to run out for about an hour. One of my properties is having an open house, and I like to check on these things personally." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "Your properties?" "I'll be back in time for dinner," I continued, grabbing my keys. "Patricia, I'm sorry to rush off, but you understand how business obligations can be." I left them to handle the explanations, curious about how they would choose to frame the situation. The open house was for a 3-bedroom Victorian I'd purchased a year ago and completely renovated. Located in one of the city's most desirable historic neighborhoods, it was attracting serious buyers and significant interest. My realtor, Karen, greeted me with enthusiasm. "Dorothy, perfect timing. We've had 12 showings already, and there's a lot of positive feedback about the restoration work." I toured the house with her, noting how the potential buyers reacted to different features. Real estate had taught me to read people quickly, to understand what they valued and what concerned them. "The kitchen renovation is getting the most praise," Karen continued, "and everyone loves the way you preserve the original hardwood throughout." I nodded, watching a young couple examine the crown molding in the dining room. They had the intense focus of serious buyers who were already imagining their furniture in the space. "What's the market like for similar properties?" I asked. "Competitive. Your price point might actually be slightly under market value. We could probably ask for 10,000 more." "Let's stick with the current price. I'd rather have multiple offers and choose the right buyers." Karen smiled. "You always think long-term. That's why your properties hold their value so well." I spent 45 minutes at the open house, then drove back home. The afternoon had been productive, and I was curious to see how the conversation had gone in my absence. I entered the house to find Patricia sitting in the living room with a cup of tea, looking somewhat shell-shocked. "How was the open house?" Amanda asked. "Busy. We've had excellent interest. I expect we'll see multiple offers by Tuesday. Patricia set down her teacup with a delicate clink. Dorothy, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Amanda and Robert have told me some surprising things about your financial situation. Oh? They mentioned you own multiple properties. Yes, quite a few. Patricia's professor instincts kicked in, and I could see her formulating questions like she was preparing for an oral examination. May I ask how you got started in real estate? I smiled, recognizing her tone. This wasn't judgment. This was professional curiosity. I bought my first duplex when I was 23, lived in one unit, rented the other. The rental income covered most of the mortgage. And you expanded from there? Gradually. Each property helped fund the next. Purchase. I've always been conservative about leveraging, never overextending. Patricia leaned forward, engaging now rather than interrogating. That's fascinating. What's your strategy for property selection? For the next hour, we discussed real estate investment strategies, market trends, and property management philosophy. I could see Patricia's respect growing as I demonstrated knowledge that went far beyond what she'd expected. You know, she said finally, I wish I'd had your foresight at your age. I put everything into retirement funds and savings accounts. Very traditional, very safe, and not nearly as profitable. Robert chose that moment to announce dinner was ready. As we moved to the dining room, Patricia fell into step beside me. Dorothy, she said quietly, I owe you an apology. Oh? When I arrived, I made assumptions about your situation, about why you were living here, what your financial circumstances were. I was quite wrong. Apology accepted, though it wasn't really necessary. It was necessary, Patricia insisted. I treated you as if you were a burden on my daughters' family, when clearly the opposite is true. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. The conversation flowed naturally between topics, and Patricia seemed genuinely interested in my experiences as a property investor. She asked intelligent questions and offered her own observations about economic trends. You've really built something impressive, she said over dessert. All while raising a family and maintaining these relationships. That takes remarkable balance. I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in months. This was how I was supposed to be treated, as an equal, as someone with experiences and expertise worth respecting. After dinner, while we were clearing the table, Patricia pulled Amanda aside. I couldn't hear the exact words, but Patricia's gestures and expressions made it clear she was delivering some kind of lecture about assumptions and respect. Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, the four adults sat in the living room with coffee and wine. Dorothy, Patricia said, I have to ask, why didn't you correct our misconceptions sooner? It was a question I'd been asked multiple times, in different forms, over the past weeks. Because I wanted to belong to this family as myself, not as my money, I said. When you thought I was just an ordinary mother-in-law who needed help, and you welcomed me anyway, I thought it meant something. It did mean something, Robert protested. Then why did it change? Why did I become a burden? Amanda looked uncomfortable. We never meant for you to feel that way. But I did feel that way, daily. Patricia set down her wine glass. May I offer an outside perspective? We all nodded. What I see here is a family that lost sight of respect in the daily grind of living together. Dorothy, you allowed yourself to be diminished to keep peace. Robert, Amanda, you fell into taking her for granted because she didn't push back. She paused, looking at each of us. But there's genuine love here, that's obvious. The question is whether you can rebuild on a foundation of mutual respect rather than assumptions and sacrifices. The room was quiet for a moment. I want to try, Amanda said finally. So do I, Robert added. I looked at them both, seeing not the people who had made me feel diminished, but the people I remembered caring about, the son I'd raised, the daughter-in-law I'd welcomed into our family. The pool construction starts Monday, I said. If you're really interested in rebuilding our relationship, I could use your input on some of the design decisions. Amanda's face lit up. Really? Really. And I've been thinking about hosting a dinner party once it's complete. Maybe 8 or 10 people. You could help me plan the menu. I'd love that, she said, and for the first time in months, her enthusiasm seemed genuine. Patricia raised her wine glass. Here's to new beginnings and seeing people clearly. We all clinked glasses, and I felt a tentative hope that maybe this could work after all. The weekend continued with a surprising ease that I hadn't felt since moving into the house. Patricia proved to be excellent company, full of stories from her academic career and genuinely interested in my property management experiences. On Sunday morning, she asked if she could see some of my other properties. Not to pry, she clarified quickly. I'm just fascinated by your approach to real estate. As an economist, I find your strategy quite sophisticated. I decided to take her to the 4-unit building I'd just purchased downtown. It was still in the early stages of renovation, but the bones were good, and the location was improving, rapidly. This building was severely undervalued, I explained as we walked through the first unit. The previous owner was elderly and couldn't keep up with maintenance, but the structure is solid. Patricia examined the exposed brick walls and original hardwood floors. You have an eye for potential. This is going to be beautiful when you're finished. Thank you. I learned early on that people will pay premium prices for character, as long as modern conveniences are included. We spent an hour touring the building, discussing renovation plans and market projections. Patricia asked astute questions about cash flow analysis and return on investment. You know, she said, as we prepared to leave, you should consider speaking at some of the real estate investment groups in the area. Your experience would be valuable to newer investors. The suggestion surprised me. Do you really think so? Absolutely. You've built substantial wealth through careful, strategic property investments. That's not luck. That's skill and knowledge. Driving back to the house, I felt energized in a way I hadn't in years. Patricia's professional respect meant something to me, especially coming from someone as accomplished as she was. That afternoon, while Patricia and Amanda were planning Emma's upcoming birthday party, I retreated to my newly renovated sanctuary to make some business calls. My accountant, Helen, called back within minutes of my leaving a message. Dorothy, I was just reviewing your quarterly reports. Your portfolio performance is exceptional this year. Thank you, Helen. I'm calling about the Delaware property. Have you finished analyzing the tax implications of that 1031 exchange? All done. You'll save approximately $40,000 in capital gains taxes, and the new property should increase your cash flow by about $800 monthly. I could hear voices in the hallway outside my room as Helen and I discussed various tax strategies and investment options. When I finally ended the call, I found Amanda hovering near my door. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help overhearing. I waited for her to continue. A 1031 exchange. That's pretty advanced real estate. Strategy, isn't it? It's a useful tool for property investors, yes. Amanda sat down on my bed, looking thoughtful. I've been thinking a lot since Friday about all the assumptions I made, about how I treated you. And I realize I didn't just underestimate your finances. I underestimated you as a person, your intelligence, your business acumen, your independence. I joined her on the bed. Thank you for saying that. I keep thinking about the bathroom thing, she continued. How that must have felt. Like we were telling you that you didn't belong in the nice spaces. That's exactly how it felt. Oh, Dorothy, Amanda said, putting her head in her hands. We were awful. You were thoughtless, I corrected, echoing what I'd said before. But we can move past it if we all make changes. What kind of changes? I thought carefully about how to answer. From my side, I need to stop accommodating disrespectful behavior just to keep peace. I need to speak up when something bothers me, instead of assuming you'll figure it out eventually. And from our side, you need to remember that I'm a whole person, not just a grandmother and babysitter. I have interests, expertise, a life beyond this family. Can I ask you something personal? I nodded. Do you miss being married? Living alone? The question caught me off guard. I miss Thomas terribly, I said honestly. But I don't miss the assumptions people make about widows, that we're helpless, lonely, desperate for family to take care of us. But you are part of this family. Yes, and I want to stay part of this family. But as an equal member, not as a project you're managing. Amanda was quiet for a moment. The pool, she said finally. What about it? When you first announced it, I was furious. It felt like you were making decisions about our property without asking. And now? Now I understand you were making a statement, showing us that you have agency, resources, the right to make choices that affect your life. I smiled. You're a quick learner. I'm trying to be. Downstairs, I could hear Patricia's voice mixing with Robert's as they discussed something in the kitchen. Emma's laughter punctuated their conversation. What do you want from us going forward? Amanda asked. Respect, I said simply. Inclusion in decisions that affect me. Recognition that I bring value to this household. Not just financial value, but experience, wisdom, perspective. And if we can't provide that, then I'll find somewhere I can. The directness of my answer seemed to surprise her. You'd really leave? After everything we've been through to get to this point? Amanda, I love this family. I love Emma desperately. But I won't sacrifice my dignity again. I spent too many years building a life of independence to give it up now. She nodded slowly. I understand, and I respect that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of family life downstairs. The dinner party you mentioned, Amanda said eventually. I'd really like to help with that. I'd like that too. Can I make a suggestion? Of course. What if we invited some of your real estate colleagues? I'd like to see that side of your life. The offer touched me more than I expected. You don't want to just meet my bridge group or book club? I want to understand who you really are. All of who you are. For the first time since moving into this house, I felt like Amanda was seeing me as a complete person. I'll make some calls, I promised. That evening, Patricia prepared a feast for Sunday dinner, enlisting Emma as her sous chef. The kitchen was filled with laughter and the smell of roasting chicken. Grandma, Emma said, appearing at my elbow with flour on her nose. Great Grammy says you're really good at math. I am pretty good at math, I confirmed. She says you're good at business math. What's business math? Robert looked up from where he was setting the table. Do you want to explain, Mom? I could hear the genuine interest in his voice, not the patronizing tone he'd used so often before. Business math is using numbers to make good decisions, I said to Emma. Like when I decide whether to buy a building, I have to calculate if the rent people pay me will be more than the money I spend fixing it up. Emma scrunched up her nose. That sounds hard. It can be, but I've had lots of practice. Maybe you could teach me sometime? I'd love to. Patricia emerged from the kitchen, carrying a platter of vegetables. Your grandmother is one of the smartest business people I've met, she told Emma. You're lucky to have someone so accomplished to learn from. The pride in Emma's face as she looked at me was worth more than any investment return I'd ever received. During dinner, the conversation ranged from Emma's school activities to Patricia's research to my plans for the downtown property. I've been thinking about that building, Robert said. The location is perfect for young professionals. With the new transit station going in nearby, property values are going to increase significantly. I raised an eyebrow. You've been researching the area? A little. I wanted to understand what you saw in it. And? And I think you're brilliant for buying it when you did. In 5 years, you probably won't be able to find anything comparable at that price point. The conversation continued with everyone contributing observations and questions. For the first time, I felt like my business activities were being treated as legitimate and interesting, not as some quirky hobby I'd picked up. After dinner, as we gathered in the living room, Patricia made an announcement. I'll be staying, an extra day or two, if that's all right with everyone. Dorothy's offered to show me some more of her properties, and I find myself quite fascinated by her approach to real estate investment. Amanda looked surprised. You're interested in real estate, Mom? I'm interested in smart business strategies, Patricia replied. And your mother-in-law has clearly mastered some very sophisticated ones. I felt a warm glow at being described as smart rather than lucky or stubborn. We could visit the mixed-use development tomorrow, I suggested. The retail spaces on the ground floor are just finishing their lease negotiations. I'd love that, Patricia said. And perhaps we could stop by that building you mentioned with the historic designation. I'm curious about the tax advantages. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't since moving in. The conversation flowed naturally. Everyone was included, and I felt valued rather than tolerated. When it was time for bed, Amanda walked me to my room. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For not giving up on us. For showing us who you really are, even when we didn't deserve it. I hugged her then, really hugged her, for the first time in months. Tomorrow's a new day, I said. We'll keep building from here. As I got ready for bed in my magnificent new bathroom, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. The guest bathroom had been a symbol of my diminished status, but now it was a symbol of something else entirely. Proof that I had agency, resources, and the right to create beauty in my own space. Tomorrow, Patricia and I would visit properties, discuss investment strategies, and continue building a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine interest. For the first time since moving into this house, I fell asleep feeling optimistic about the future. The road ahead wasn't guaranteed to be smooth, but at least we were all walking it together, seeing each other clearly at last. And if the sight of my heated marble floors every morning served as a reminder to my family that they'd been wrong about Dorothy Matthews, well, that was just an added bonus. The pool construction began on Monday morning at precisely 7 a.m., much to our neighbor Mrs. Henderson's visible displeasure. I watched from my window as she peered over the fence, her face full of disapproval at the sight of heavy machinery in our backyard. By 8 o'clock, she was at our front door. Amanda answered, looking slightly frazzled in her bathrobe. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. How can we help you? That commotion in your backyard woke up our entire household, Mrs. Henderson declared, her voice carrying that particular pitch that indicated she was building up to a full complaint. And I demand to know what kind of construction project requires such enormous equipment. I emerged from the kitchen, coffee in hand. Good morning, Judith, I said pleasantly. I apologize for the early start. The pool installation should be much quieter after today. They're just excavating now. Mrs. Henderson's eyes nearly popped out of her head. Pool? You're installing a pool? An infinity pool with a spa attachment, I confirmed. The design is quite lovely. Would you like to see the plans? Before she could respond, Amanda added, Dorothy is having it professionally, designed and installed. The landscaping will be beautiful once it's complete. Mrs. Henderson looked between us, clearly struggling to process this information. But aren't you, she began, then stopped herself. Aren't I what, dear? I thought. She floundered, clearly realizing she was about to say something potentially offensive. You thought what? Amanda asked, her voice carrying a slight edge. Well, I assumed Dorothy was living here because of financial difficulties. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but a pool seems rather extravagant in those circumstances. I smiled serenely. How thoughtful of you to be concerned about our finances, Judith. But please don't worry. I can assure you the pool is well within my budget. Mrs. Henderson's face cycled through several expressions before settling on forced politeness. Of course, I didn't mean to imply. I was merely concerned about the noise. The construction crew has promised to keep noise to a minimum during reasonable hours, I said, and once it's complete, you and Harold are welcome to admire it from your side of the fence. After she left, Amanda and I looked at each other and burst into laughter. Her face, Amanda giggled, when you mentioned the spa attachment. Poor Judith. She's spent the past 6 months pitying my financial situation. Has she? Oh, yes. She cornered me at the mailbox last month to tell me about senior services that help with utility bills. Amanda winced. How embarrassing for her. Not her fault. She was being kind, based on what she observed. We stood watching the excavation team work with their impressive machinery. Dorothy, Amanda said thoughtfully, how many other neighbors know your real situation? Most of them don't. I've never been the type to display wealth ostentatiously. But some know. The Johnsons down the street know I own rental property. They've asked for recommendations about contractors and property managers. The Petersons across the way know I'm in real estate because their daughter rents one of my units. It's funny, Amanda mused. You've been living this completely different life that we knew nothing about. Not different, just more complete than you realized. We were interrupted by a commotion at the front of the house. Robert had just left for work, and I could hear him talking animatedly to someone in the driveway. Who could that be? Amanda wondered. We went to investigate and found Robert speaking with a well-dressed couple in their 50s. The woman was carrying a tablet and several folders. Mom, these are David and Linda Peterson, real estate investors. From Chicago. They heard about your downtown property and drove down to see it. David stepped forward, extending his hand. Mrs. Matthews, we apologize for stopping by unannounced. We heard through the investor network that you recently acquired that Victorian building downtown. We're very interested in learning about your renovation plans. I shook their hands, intrigued. How did you hear about the building? Linda smiled. Word travels fast in our circles. Karen mentioned your purchase at last month's investment meeting in Chicago. Your reputation for quality renovations is quite impressive. Would you like to see the property? I asked. I was planning to check on the progress today anyway. That would be wonderful, David replied. We've been looking for similar opportunities in this market. Amanda looked surprised. Investment meetings? In Chicago? Mrs. Matthews speaks at several real estate investors' associations, Linda explained. Her presentation on historic property renovation and tax credits was particularly insightful. I could see Amanda processing this information. Another piece of my life she hadn't known existed. Amanda, would you like to come with us? I asked. You mentioned wanting to understand my business better. Her face lit up. Really? You don't mind? Not at all. We can grab lunch afterward. An hour later, the four of us were walking through the downtown building. David and Linda asked detailed questions about my acquisition strategy, renovation timeline, and tenant screening process. Your approach to preserving historic character while adding modern amenities is exactly what this market needs, David noted, examining the newly installed electrical work. I've learned that people will pay extra for authentic details, as long as everything else is updated, I replied. Linda was particularly interested in the financial aspects. Your cap rate. Projections assume full occupancy within 6 months. That seems optimistic in this market. I already have 2 units pre-leased, I informed her, and there's a waiting list for the others. Amanda had been quietly observing the conversation, but now she spoke up. How did you learn to evaluate building so quickly? Earlier, you pointed out that foundation issue just by looking at the basement walls. Experience, I said simply. After 40 years of buying buildings, you develop an eye for problems. David nodded appreciatively. Mrs. Matthews has a reputation for finding diamonds in the rough. This building is a perfect example. When Karen told us you'd purchased it for $60,000 under asking price, we couldn't believe it, Linda added. Amanda's eyes widened. $60,000 under asking? The seller was anxious to close quickly, I explained. They had already purchased another property and needed the liquidity. And you recognized that opportunity? I recognized a motivated seller with a property that had been well maintained but poorly marketed. We spent another hour touring the building, discussing everything from heating systems to rent roll optimization. David and Linda seemed genuinely interested in potentially partnering on future projects. Mrs. Matthews, David said as we prepared to leave, would you be interested in looking at a portfolio we're considering in Milwaukee? We value your expertise. I was flattered by the offer. I might be. Send me the details and I'll take a look. After they left, Amanda and I found a cafe nearby for lunch. That was incredible, Amanda said, reviewing her phone photos of the building. Watching you discuss investments with them, I had no idea you were so respected in that world. It's a small community, I said modestly. Most serious investors know each other. That's not false modesty, is it? Amanda asked perceptively. You really don't think it's a big deal that David and Linda drove 3 hours just to meet with you? I considered the question. I suppose I've never thought about it that way. To me, this is just what I do. But Dorothy, they clearly see you as an expert, someone worth learning from. She was right, and her recognition felt good. You know, what struck me the most, Amanda continued, how you handled the financial analysis. You calculated potential returns in your head faster than Linda could input numbers into her tablet. Mental math is easier when you've done similar calculations hundreds of times. Amanda set down her sandwich. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Were you always this confident in business, even when you were young? I thought back to my early property purchases. Not at all. I was terrified when I bought that first duplex. I spent months second-guessing every decision. What changed? Success. Each positive outcome built my confidence, and Thomas was wonderfully supportive. He helped me believe in my judgment. Do you think I could learn? Amanda asked hesitantly. Real estate investment, I mean. Her question surprised me. You want to learn about real estate? I want to understand how you built all this, how you see opportunities others miss. I felt a surge of unexpected emotion. This was the first time Amanda had shown genuine interest in my expertise, rather than just curiosity about my money. I'd love to teach you, I said. We could start with basic concepts and gradually work up to more complex strategies. Amanda smiled brightly. Really? You wouldn't mind? Mind? I'd enjoy it immensely. When we returned home, the pool excavation was nearly complete. Emma was pressed against the window, watching the enormous hole that had appeared in our backyard. Grandma, look how deep it is. I joined her at the window. Impressive, isn't it? Can we fill it with water now? Not yet, sweetheart. They have to put in the special bottom and sides first. Robert arrived home early, drawn by curiosity about the progress. The Petersons seemed very interested in the building, he said to me. Yes, they're considering some joint ventures. Joint ventures? Investment partnerships. They have access to capital. I have expertise in this market. We might work together on future projects. Robert nodded slowly. Mom, can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't I know about any of this? The speaking engagements, the investor networks, the respect you've earned in the real estate community? I studied my son's face, seeing genuine confusion and perhaps hurt. "Because you never asked," I said gently. "And because when I did mention my properties, you seemed to dismiss them as hobby investments or lucky purchases." Robert winced. "Did I really say that?" "More than once. I'm sorry. I had no idea they were. That you were. Running a substantial business?" "Yes." We were interrupted by the arrival of the pool contractor, Marcus, who needed to review the plumbing arrangements with me. "Mrs. Matthews, we'll need to coordinate with the gas company for the heater installation. Also, the lighting system requires dedicated electrical runs that we'll need to discuss." We spent 20 minutes reviewing technical details and making decisions about fixtures and finishes. After Marcus left, I found Robert standing in the kitchen, looking thoughtful. "You made decisions about thousands of dollars of upgrades." "Like it was choosing what to have for lunch," he said. "It's all relative," I replied. "When you've managed that much property, these decisions become routine." "How much property exactly do you manage?" I pulled out my phone and opened my property management app. Currently, 17 properties totaling 83 units, plus 2 commercial spaces and the mixed-use development. Robert sat down heavily. 83 units. Jesus, Mom. Language. "Sorry, but Mom, that's a substantial operation." "Yes, it is." "And you handle all of this yourself?" "I have a property management company for day-to-day operations, but I make all the major decisions. I review all the maintenance reports, approve all capital expenditures over $500, and personally screen all new tenants." Amanda joined us in the kitchen, overhearing the conversation. "All of them? Personally?" "I've learned that good tenants are the key to successful property investment. It's worth the time to find the right people." "How do you find time?" "For everything?" Robert asked. I smiled. "What do you think I've been doing all those times you assumed I was just keeping busy with little errands?" The realization hit them both simultaneously. "Oh my God," Amanda whispered. "Every time you said you had errands, you were actually managing your business." "Often, yes. When you bought groceries at that special store across town," Robert said slowly, "you were going to check on properties." "Sometimes." They looked at each other, and I could see them mentally reviewing months of interactions with new understanding. "Your phone calls," Amanda said. "You're always taking phone calls." "Business calls, yes." Emma ran into the kitchen, interrupting our conversation. "Daddy, come see how big the pool is now." As Robert allowed himself to be dragged to the window, Amanda remained in the kitchen with me. "Dorothy," she said quietly, "I keep thinking about all the times I treated your phone calls like annoyances. All the times I acted like you were just an elderly woman filling her day with busy work." "You didn't know," I said simply. "But I should have. I should have been more curious, more respectful of your time and activities." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Glenn, my property manager. "Excuse me," I said to Amanda. "This is about the Columbus properties." "Dorothy, we've got a situation with the Harrison building. The elevator is malfunctioning and the repair quote is significant." "How significant?" $15,000 for a temporary fix, $35,000 for a complete replacement. I found myself doing rapid mental calculations, remaining useful life of the current elevator, cost of lost rent if units became difficult to access, impact on tenant satisfaction. "What's the timeline on replacement?" 6 weeks for ordering, another 2 for installation. "And the temporary fix would last how long?" "Maybe 6 months, probably less." "Go with the replacement. Better to solve the problem permanently than keep throwing money at temporary solutions." "I'll get the paperwork started. Also, the Riverside property has a potential buyer for the commercial unit. They're offering $20,000 above asking." What's the business? High-end women's boutique. They want a 5-year lease with an option to extend. Check their financials and references. If everything looks good, we can proceed. After I hung up, I found Amanda staring at me with an expression of awe. You just approved spending $35,000 like it was nothing. Not like it was nothing, like it was a sound business decision. And the buyer for the commercial space? Potential buyer. I need to verify they're a good fit before accepting their offer. Even though they're offering more than asking price? Price isn't everything. A stable, long-term tenant who will enhance the property's reputation is worth more than a quick profit. Robert returned from the pool supervision just as Patricia came downstairs from her afternoon rest. Dorothy, Patricia said, I've been reading about 1031 exchanges since our conversation yesterday. Fascinating strategy. You've been researching tax-deferred exchanges? Amanda asked her mother, surprised. Your mother-in-law has sparked my interest in real estate investment principles. Did you know she's completed 7 1031 exchanges over the past decade? Robert looked confused. What's a 1031 exchange? I explained the tax code provision that allows property investors to defer capital gains taxes by exchanging one property for another of equal or greater value. So, Robert said slowly, you can essentially trade up to more valuable properties without paying taxes on the profits. As long as you follow the specific rules and timelines, I confirmed. Patricia nodded approvingly. It's quite sophisticated. Dorothy's used this strategy to go from smaller duplexes to much larger apartment buildings. The 4-unit building I just purchased, I added, was part of a 1031 exchange. I sold a duplex in a declining neighborhood and acquired a property in an area that's rapidly appreciating. Amanda was taking notes on her phone. This is what I want to learn about, she said. These kinds of strategic decisions. It takes time, I warned, and there's always risk involved. But there's also significant potential reward, Patricia pointed out. Dorothy's built substantial wealth through careful application of these strategies. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the evening news crew. News crew? Robert asked, looking out the window. Marcus the contractor was speaking to a reporter while a cameraman filmed the pool construction. Oh no, I said, realizing what was happening. Amanda looked alarmed. What? Mrs. Henderson must have called them. She's been making complaints about the construction noise. We all went outside to find the reporter approaching us. Excuse me, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 8 News. We're investigating complaints about excessive construction noise in residential neighborhoods. Are you the homeowner? Before I could answer, Marcus interjected. This is Mrs. Matthews. She's the client for this project. The reporter turned to me. Mrs. Matthews, can you comment on your neighbor's concerns about noise levels? I glanced toward Mrs. Henderson's house, where she was peering through her curtains. We've made every effort to minimize disruption, I said diplomatically. The construction crews arrive at reasonable hours and finish by 5 p.m. daily. What type of construction are you doing? Installing a pool. The reporter's eyebrows rose. Must be quite an elaborate pool to require such extensive equipment. Marcus stepped forward proudly. Custom infinity pool with integrated spa. One of the most sophisticated designs we've done this year. And the estimated cost? I felt uncomfortable with the direction of the questioning, but Marcus answered before I could deflect. Total project cost is around $250,000, including the custom water features and landscaping. I could practically hear the collective gasp from neighbors who had gathered to watch the filming. $250,000? The reporter repeated, clearly recognizing the news value of this information. All permits are in order, I said quickly, and we're in full compliance with city regulations. Mrs. Matthews, can you tell us about yourself? What's your background that enables such substantial home improvements? I felt trapped. Saying too little would make me appear suspicious, but saying too much would expose my private life to public scrutiny. I'm a real estate investor, I said simply. Local properties? Various locations. The reporter sensed there was more to the story. How long have you been in real estate? About 40 years. That's quite a career. You must have built a substantial portfolio over that time. Before I could answer, David and Linda Peterson appeared, having returned to discuss some details about potential partnerships. Mrs. Matthews, David called out, approaching with Linda. We've reviewed those Milwaukee properties. Very interesting opportunity. The reporter immediately turned to them. Excuse me, are you also in real estate? We're investors from Chicago, Linda replied. We came to discuss some potential projects with Mrs. Matthews. What kind of projects? David smiled. Multi-million-dollar acquisitions primarily. Mrs. Matthews has quite a reputation in our industry. I watched Mrs. Henderson emerge from her house, drawn by the commotion. Her face was a mixture of shock and curiosity as she processed what she was hearing. The reporter, sensing a bigger story, pressed on. Mrs. Matthews, it sounds like you're quite successful. Can you give us some idea of the scope of your business? I looked around at my family, my neighbors, and the news crew, realizing there was no way to maintain my privacy now. I own a small real estate portfolio, I said carefully. Nothing too dramatic. But Marcus, proud of his high-profile client, wasn't content with that modest description. Small? Mrs. Matthews owns buildings all over the state. This pool is just a tiny fraction of her real estate holdings. The reporter's eyes lit up. This was turning into a much better story than noise complaints. Buildings all over the state? Can you be more specific? I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. I could continue trying to downplay my success, or I could finally acknowledge publicly who I really was. Looking at my family, Robert's admiring expression, Amanda's supportive smile, Patricia's encouraging nod, I made my decision. I own 17 properties across Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, I said clearly. Primarily apartment buildings with some commercial space. 17 properties, the reporter repeated, her voice rising with excitement. And you're in your 60s? 64. How does a 64-year-old woman build such an extensive real estate empire? One property at a time, smart decisions, and a lot of hard work. By now, more neighbors had gathered. Mrs. Henderson stood frozen, probably remembering every pitying comment she'd made about my financial situation. This is an inspiring story, the reporter continued. Starting from nothing? Not quite nothing. I bought my first duplex when I was 23, lived in one unit, rented the other. And built from there? And built from there. Robert stepped forward. My mother is being modest. She's one of the most respected real estate investors in the region. Amanda nodded. She speaks at investment conferences and advises other property owners. Patricia added. She's also incredibly generous with her knowledge and experience. The reporter looked like she'd struck journalistic gold. Would you be willing to do a longer interview? Our viewers would be fascinated by your story. I looked around at my family, seeing nothing but encouragement. I suppose I could do that, I said. As the news crew set up for a more formal interview, the neighbors began dispersing, whispering among themselves. Mrs. Henderson approached hesitantly. Dorothy, she said, her voice small. I had no idea. No reason you should have, I replied, kindly. About the pool complaints. You were concerned about noise in the neighborhood. That's understandable. But now I feel foolish. Don't. You were looking out for your quality of life. She nodded gratefully and returned to her house, probably to share the incredible news with her husband. As I sat for the formal interview, answering questions about my business philosophy and investment strategies, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't expected. For too long, I'd downplayed my success, hidden my expertise, allowed others to make assumptions. "What advice would you give to someone just starting in real estate investment?" the reporter asked. "Start small, but think big. Learn from every mistake. And never let anyone tell you that you're too old, too female, or too anything to succeed in this business." When the interview was over and the news crew had departed, my family and I stood in the backyard, looking at the enormous hole that would soon be our beautiful infinity pool. "Well," Robert said finally, "I guess everyone knows now." "Are you okay with that?" Amanda asked me. I considered the question. For years, I'd maintained my privacy, kept my business life separate from my personal life. But the forced revelation felt strangely freeing. "Yes," I said, surprising myself. "I think I am." Patricia smiled. "You should be proud of what you've accomplished." "And we should be proud of you," Amanda added, "instead of making you feel like you had to hide it." As the sun set, we went inside for dinner. Over the meal, the conversation naturally turned to business strategies and investment opportunities. For the first time since moving in, I felt completely comfortable discussing my work with my family. My phone rang during dessert. It was Karen, my realtor. "Dorothy, I just saw the news preview. They're promoting your story for tomorrow night's broadcast." "Oh my," I said, feeling a flutter of nervousness. "This is wonderful publicity. I've already had 3 calls from potential sellers who want to work with you specifically." After I hung up, Amanda grinned at me. "Looks like you're about to become famous." "I'm not sure how I feel about that," I admitted. "Feel good about it," Robert encouraged. "You deserve recognition for what you've built." That night, as I soaked in my luxurious bathroom for what might be the last time before I had to share the house with curious strangers drawn by the news story, I reflected on the day's events. The bathroom that had once symbolized my marginalization now felt like a declaration of independence. Tomorrow, the whole city would know that the woman who'd been relegated to the guest facilities was actually quite capable of creating her own magnificent spaces. And somehow, that felt exactly right. The news story aired on Thursday evening and everything changed. I woke Friday morning to 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and an inbox overflowing with emails. My phone buzzed constantly as I tried to get through my morning routine in my beautiful bathroom that had become ground zero of local television fame. "Dorothy," Amanda called from downstairs. "There are people outside." I looked out my window to see a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk, some holding notebooks, others with cameras. The pool construction had been temporarily halted. Marcus had called early to say he couldn't get his equipment past the media attention. "This is insane," Robert muttered, peeking through the living room curtains. "Channel 5 is here now, too." Emma was delighted by the commotion, pressing her face against the glass and waving at the reporters. "Grandma's famous," she announced proudly. My phone rang again. This time it was Glenn from the property management company. "Dorothy, have you seen your email? We've received 28 requests for property tours since the story aired and at least 15 serious inquiries about purchasing buildings from your portfolio." 28? I repeated, feeling overwhelmed. "And that's just since last night. Also, that investment firm from Columbus wants to discuss acquiring several of your properties as a package deal. They're offering significant premiums." Before I could respond, Amanda appeared with a cup of coffee and a sympathetic expression. "The morning show wants to interview you live at 9, she said. "They're setting up in the driveway." I sat down heavily. What have I done? "You've inspired people," Robert said, joining us in the kitchen. "The local paper already has an online article calling you the grandmother mogul and describing your story as proof that it's never too late to build wealth." The doorbell rang insistently. "I'll get it," Robert offered. He returned with a well-dressed woman carrying a briefcase. "Mom, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the university. She wants to invite you to speak at their business school. Dr. Chen smiled warmly. Professor Matthews, I'm the director of our real estate studies program. Your story has created quite a buzz among our students and faculty. We'd be honored if you'd consider giving a guest lecture. I'm not a professor, I corrected gently. You're a practitioner with 40 years of experience and a portfolio worth millions. That's even better than academic credentials. As we discussed potential speaking engagements, more visitors arrived. A representative from a women's investment club, a reporter from a business magazine, and someone claiming to represent a cable television network interested in following my story. By noon, I felt like I was drowning in opportunities. We need to manage this better, Amanda suggested. Maybe set up specific times for interviews and meetings? Or hire a publicist, Patricia added. She'd extended her stay indefinitely, fascinated by the unfolding drama. I don't want to be a celebrity, I protested. I just wanted to build wealth and have a nice place to live. Emma ran into the kitchen, followed by Robert. Mom, our neighbors are giving paid interviews about you to a gossip website. Paid interviews? Mrs. Henderson just told someone from Celeb Talk that you seemed like just a normal grandmother until the truth came out. I couldn't help laughing. Well, I suppose that's accurate. The situation grew more surreal when a black SUV pulled up outside and 3 men in expensive suits emerged. Who are they? Amanda asked. Robert went to find out, returning with wide eyes. Private equity firm from New York. They want to discuss acquiring your entire portfolio. The entire thing? All 17 properties. They mentioned something about creating a Dorothy Matthews real estate investment trust. I felt a sudden surge of irritation. They want to turn my life's work into an investment product named after me? Apparently, and they flew here just to meet with you. That afternoon, I found myself sitting in my living room with 5 different groups of potential business partners, investors, and media representatives. Each had a different vision for leveraging my brand, scaling my success, or monetizing my story. The pool contractors watched from outside, unable to continue their work with the chaos in the backyard. Mrs. Matthews, one of the New York investors, was saying, "We see enormous potential in packaging your properties for institutional buyers. Your story adds significant value to the assets." Your story could inspire millions, the TV producer interjected. We're envisioning a show called Golden Years, Golden Properties, following you as you help other seniors build wealth through real estate. And think of the book possibilities, added a literary agent who'd appeared from nowhere. Your memoir could be a bestseller, from Duplex to Dynasty or Guest Bathroom to Goldmine. I held up my hand, suddenly exhausted. Stop, everyone, please stop. The room fell silent. I need some time to think about all of this. Please leave your information and I'll consider your proposals. After everyone had filed out, leaving behind a stack of business cards and contracts, I sat alone in my living room. Amanda found me there an hour later. How are you holding up? I feel like a circus attraction, I admitted. You know you don't have to do any of this, right? You can just say no. I looked at her gratefully. When did you become so wise? Maybe when I started listening to you instead of making assumptions. That evening, we had our first normal family dinner in days. The reporters had finally departed, and the pool construction could resume Monday. I've been thinking, I announced over dessert, about all these opportunities. And? Robert asked. I've decided what I want to do. They all leaned forward. I'm going to accept the university teaching opportunity. 1 guest lecture to start, maybe more if I enjoy it. That's wonderful, Patricia exclaimed. I'm also going to work with that women's investment club to create an educational program about real estate investing. What about the book deal? Amanda asked. I might consider it, but for the story I want to tell, not the sensationalized version they're pushing. And the TV show? I shook my head firmly. Absolutely not. I didn't come this far to become a reality star. What about the investment offers? I'm not selling. These properties are my life's work, not commodities to be traded. Over the next week, the media attention gradually subsided, but the impact lingered. My phone still rang regularly with speaking requests and consulting opportunities. I chose carefully, accepting only those that aligned with my values. The pool construction resumed and was completed beautifully. When the contractors finished, I threw a small party to celebrate. Not just the pool, but the new equilibrium we'd found as a family. Mrs. Henderson and several other neighbors attended, their attitudes completely transformed. The woman who'd once offered me information about utility assistance programs now asked for advice about property investment. I have some savings I've been keeping in CDs, she confided. Maybe you could help me understand how to make them work harder. I smiled. I'd be happy to help you explore your options. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story with the headline, "Neighborhood Real Estate Queen Returns to Normal Life, Sort of." The article described how I'd chosen education and mentoring over fame and fortune, turning down multiple media deals to focus on sharing knowledge rather than selling entertainment. 1 month after the initial news story, I stood before a packed lecture hall at the university, looking out at an audience of students, faculty, and community members. When I bought my first duplex at 23, I began. I never imagined I'd be standing here 40 years later, sharing this story with you. But that's the thing about building wealth. It's not about having a grand master plan. It's about making one good decision at a time, learning from your mistakes, and never being afraid to start. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Professor Matthews, what's the biggest myth about real estate investing? I'm not a professor, I corrected with a smile. Just someone who made a lot of mistakes and learned from them. And the biggest myth? That you need substantial capital to start. I began with a small down payment and a willingness to live in one side of a duplex while I renovated the other. What about being a woman in a male-dominated field? Another student asked. Use it to your advantage, I replied. People often underestimate you, which means they're more likely to reveal information they might keep from a male investor. And sometimes, frankly, they just want to help. Don't let pride keep you from accepting good advice or beneficial partnerships. After the lecture, several students approached with questions and business cards. One young man looked particularly thoughtful. Mrs. Matthews, he said, your story really resonates with me. I'm 22 and thinking about real estate, but everyone tells me I should focus on my traditional career first. What does your gut tell you? That I could do both. Maybe start small like you did. I pulled out a business card. Email me. I meet with serious potential investors once a month to review properties and strategies. You're welcome to attend. Back home, life had settled into a new routine. Amanda had enrolled in a real estate investing course and was studying for her license. She'd discovered an aptitude for analyzing market trends and was considering a career change. Robert had gained new respect for the business side of real estate, often consulting with me about properties he was listing for sale. Mom, he said one evening, I have a client who owns a small apartment building. She's thinking of selling, but I wonder if it might be a good addition to your portfolio. Let me take a look at the numbers, I replied, pleased that he was thinking strategically about investments rather than just commissions. The guest bathroom had become something of a legend in our household. Emma called it Grandma's Palace, and often brought friends to see the heated floors and color-changing lights. It served as a daily reminder that respect isn't automatically given based on age or family relationships. It must be earned and maintained. One evening, as I was relaxing in the spa attached to our new pool, Amanda joined me. I owe you an apology, she said, settling into the warm water. We've moved past apologies, I replied. No, this is different. I've been thinking about the bathroom situation, and I realize now it wasn't just about bathrooms. I waited for her to continue. It was about power, about controlling the spaces you could occupy, literally and figuratively. And now? Now, I understand that you never needed our permission to occupy any space. You'd already earned your place through years of hard work and smart decisions. We floated in comfortable silence, watching the outdoor lights reflected in the pool water. "Dorothy," Amanda said eventually, "I'm glad you didn't sell everything and leave us. I'm glad I didn't have to." 6 months after the news, story that changed everything, I stood in the same guest bathroom that had once symbolized my second-class status. The morning light streamed through the custom glass, and the heated floors warmed my feet as I prepared for another day. My life had grown fuller, but not more complicated. I'd found a balance between sharing my expertise and maintaining my privacy, between helping others and protecting my own interests. The portfolio had grown by 2 properties, and I'd mentored 6 families through their first real estate investments. 3 of my students from the university lecture series now owned their own rental properties. As I headed downstairs for breakfast, I could hear Emma practicing piano in the living room, Amanda discussing property valuation methods on a call with her study group, and Robert reviewing listings with a client who wanted investment properties, rather than just a primary residence. Our family dynamic had completely transformed. Where once I'd been the elderly relative graciously hosted out of obligation, I was now recognized as a matriarch, entrepreneur, and mentor. The shift hadn't happened overnight, but it had been worth every awkward conversation and difficult moment. Mrs. Henderson waved from her yard as I stepped outside to check on the pool maintenance. We'd become unlikely friends, bonding over property, investment strategies, and swapping stories about dealing with difficult tenants. "Morning, Dorothy. I wanted to let you know the duplex viewing went well. The young couple seems very promising." She was one of my first students, and after 6 months of mentoring, she'd purchased her first investment property. Wonderful. Remember to check their employment verification carefully. "Already on it. You taught me well." As she headed back inside, my phone buzzed with a text from the university. They wanted to discuss establishing a Dorothy Matthews scholarship for students interested in real estate entrepreneurship. I smiled, remembering the lonely woman who'd once felt grateful just to have a place in her son's house. That woman would never have imagined this future. Not the wealth, not the recognition, but mostly not the deep satisfaction of being valued for her mind, her experience, and her wisdom. The guest bathroom had taught me an important lesson. How you allow others to treat you becomes how you're treated. By insisting on respect, by refusing to accept less than I deserved, I hadn't just improved my own life. I'd created a model for everyone around me. As I prepared for another day of property reviews, mentoring sessions, and family time, I felt deeply grateful. Not for the money or the recognition, but for the second chance to be seen, really seen, by the people I loved most. The pool sparkled. In the morning sun, a symbol of the choices that had changed everything. But the real transformation wasn't visible in marble bathrooms or infinity pools. It was in the way my family now looked at me, with respect, admiration, and genuine interest in my thoughts and experiences. I was still the same woman who'd been relegated to the guest bathroom 6 months ago. But now, everyone could see what had always been true. Dorothy Matthews was a force to be reckoned with, and guest bathrooms would never be good enough again. Looking back now, 5 years after that first morning, Amanda told me I could only use the guest bathroom. I find myself in a place I never imagined possible. As I write these words from my home office in our expanded house, yes, we knocked down a wall and added a proper suite for me, I'm struck by how completely my life has transformed. The woman who quietly accepted being relegated to the smallest bathroom in the house has become someone who regularly speaks at real estate conferences across the country. My family, who once saw me as a burden to be managed, now seeks my advice on everything from career decisions to life choices. Most importantly, I've learned that respect isn't something that comes automatically with age or family ties. It must be earned and actively maintained. Emma, now 10, recently asked me why I keep my fancy bathroom when we could have a bigger family room. I tried to explain that the bathroom isn't just about marble tiles and heated floors. It's about remembering what it feels like to be valued. She nodded seriously and said, "Like how my bedroom is mine even when my friends have bigger ones." Children understand ownership in ways adults sometimes forget. The investment portfolio has grown significantly since that chaotic week when the news crews discovered my secret. I now own 25 properties across 4 states, with a net worth that still surprises me when my accountant provides annual summaries. But the numbers aren't what matter most anymore. What truly changed my life wasn't revealing my wealth. It was standing up for myself. The bathroom situation had become a metaphor for how I was being treated in general. Acceptable. For me to have less. To make do. To be grateful for whatever space was allotted to me. When I renovated that guest bathroom into something spectacular, I wasn't just improving a room. I was making a statement about my worth. Amanda's journey has been particularly meaningful to watch. She completed her real estate license and now works exclusively with investors. We've partnered on 3 property purchases, and she's developed an impressive talent for identifying undervalued buildings in emerging neighborhoods. More importantly, she's become one of my closest friends. We meet weekly for coffee, discussing everything from market trends to child-rearing philosophies. "You know what I learned from that whole bathroom thing?" she told me recently. "I learned that generosity without respect is actually a form of control." She's right. Allowing me to live in their house while restricting which spaces I could use wasn't kindness. It was a way of establishing hierarchy. They felt good about helping me while ensuring I understood my place in their world. Robert has evolved too, though his journey has been more complex. He struggled with guilt about how he'd treated me, particularly after understanding the scope of my business success. For months, he overcompensated, asking my opinion on everything and treating me with an almost formal deference that felt just as uncomfortable as being dismissed. It took time for us to find our natural rhythm as adults, who happened to be mother and son. Now he regularly brings properties to my attention, and I've helped him navigate some of his more challenging sales. Our relationship is built on mutual professional respect, rather than just family obligation. The speaking engagements have been unexpectedly fulfilling. Universities, investment clubs, women's organizations, they all want to hear about building, wealth later in life, about starting over, about refusing to be diminished by others' expectations. I've discovered I enjoy teaching, breaking down complex concepts for people who feel intimidated by real estate investing. One of my favorite speaking topics is the myth of declining capability. Society assumes that as we age, we become less able to make smart financial decisions, less capable of managing complex businesses, less worthy of respect. My story challenges those assumptions directly. Mrs. Henderson, who's become almost a sister to me, now owns 4 rental properties. She jokes that I've turned our entire neighborhood into investors, and she's not far from wrong. 3 other neighbors have purchased properties based on principles I've shared, and our monthly neighborhood investment club meetings are surprisingly well attended. "You've given us permission to be more than we thought we could be," she said at our last meeting. "Not just permission, you've shown us how." The original news story still surfaces occasionally in social media feeds, usually with headlines like, "You'll never believe what this grandmother was hiding," or "The real estate secret that shocked her family." The comments are always entertaining. Some people admire my business acumen, others criticize my family for not knowing about my success, and a few suggest I should have been more upfront from the beginning. That last criticism deserves response. Yes, I could have corrected their assumptions immediately. I could have announced my net worth on day one and demanded the respect I deserved, but doing so would have invalidated the genuine version of who I was trying to be, someone who wanted to belong to their family not because of what I could provide, but because of who I was. The truth is, I needed to discover that their love was conditional on my perceived dependence. I needed to experience being diminished so I could understand how much I'd been allowing it in other areas of my life. The guest bathroom situation forced a reckoning that was long overdue. Patricia, my former mother-in-law who's become a dear friend, summed it up perfectly during one of her extended visits. You tested their character and found it wanting. Then you gave them a chance to improve, and they rose to the occasion. Not every family would have risen to the occasion. I'm fortunate that beneath their misguided behavior was genuine love and a willingness to change. Many stories like mine end with permanent estrangement, with families torn apart by resentment and misunderstanding. The pool, which started all the revelations, has become a gathering place for our extended community. We host neighborhood barbecues, investment club meetings, and family celebrations. Emma has swimming parties that rival anything in the suburbs. The Infinity Edge reflects the sunset beautifully, and the heated spa provides year-round relaxation. But beyond its practical benefits, the pool stands as a symbol of transformation. Every time I see it, I remember the week when everything changed, when I stopped hiding my true self and started demanding the respect I deserved. My property management style has evolved too. I've become more selective about acquisitions, focusing on properties that align with my values. I prefer renovating historic buildings to preserve character, and I work exclusively with contractors who treat their workers fairly. Several of my properties have become models for sustainable renovation practices. The business continues to grow, though I've resisted pressure to expand too quickly. I've turned down dozens of partnership offers from larger investment firms who want to scale my methods for institutional portfolios. My approach works because it's personal, thoughtful, and based on relationships rather than pure profit maximization. One of my proudest achievements is the mentorship program I've developed. Over the past 5 years, I've guided 47 people through their first real estate investments. About 60% have gone on to purchase additional properties, and 3 have built substantial portfolios of their own. You didn't just teach us about real estate, one mentee told me. You taught us to value ourselves enough to demand better treatment. That's what I hope people take from my story. Not just investment strategies, but the importance of self-respect. Too many people, especially women and seniors, accept less than they deserve because it's easier than fighting for more. My bathroom. Renovation was really about refusing to accept less. The financial impact of my transformation has been significant, but the personal growth has been immeasurable. I've learned to set boundaries, to speak up for myself, to value my own expertise. I've discovered that age brings wisdom, not obsolescence, and that experience is a valuable commodity in any market. Emma often brings friends over, and they're always impressed by our house, especially my bathroom with its luxury features. But what makes me proudest is when I hear them talking about their own goals, their own plans for the future. Emma frequently mentions wanting to buy buildings someday, like Grandma does. She's growing up in a household where an older woman is respected for her intelligence and business acumen, where success isn't limited by age or gender. That may be the most important legacy of this entire experience. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never stood up for myself, if I'd continued accepting the guest bathroom and all it represented. Would I have slowly faded into the background, becoming the quiet grandmother who helped with chores and provided free babysitting? Would my business have stagnated as I devoted all my energy to winning approval from people who didn't respect me? The counterfactual is sobering. By insisting on my worth, I didn't just improve my own situation, I created space for everyone in my family to grow and change. Amanda discovered her talent for real estate. Robert learned to value expertise over assumption. Emma grew up understanding that women can be powerful at any age. Looking forward, I have no intention of slowing down. I'm currently negotiating the purchase of a small hotel that needs significant renovation, and I'm developing a workshop series about real estate investing for retirement planning. There's talk of writing a book, not the sensationalized version publishers initially wanted, but a practical guide for people who want to build wealth through property investment. The guest bathroom remains exactly as I renovated it, magnificent, luxurious, and used daily by whoever needs it. But its symbolic meaning has shifted. Instead of representing exclusion, it now stands for the principle that everyone deserves beautiful spaces, that compromise on basic dignity is never necessary. As I finish this reflection, preparing for another property tour with a potential mentee, I'm filled with gratitude. Not just for the financial success or the family reconciliation, but for the hard-won knowledge that respect must be claimed, not just hoped for. The woman who was told she could only use the guest bathroom discovered she could command her own entire suite. More importantly, she learned that the real renovation wasn't about marble tiles and heated floors. It was about reconstructing how others saw her and how she saw herself. That's the true transformation, from someone who accepted diminishment to someone who insists on dignity. From someone who hid her light to someone who shines brightly and encourages others to do the same. The guest bathroom is still beautiful, still functional, still a testament to quality workmanship. But it's no longer a symbol of limitations. It's a reminder that spectacular things can come from refusing to accept less than you deserve. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable property I've ever acquired, the unshakable knowledge of my own worth. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.